What would you say you do here?
Well, look, I already told you. I deal with the goddamn customers so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. X-Men Mondays keeps on being the gift that keeps giving from Adventures in Poor Taste. Normally they have a big feature story where they have interviews and stuff like that that are related to X-Men. This week, well, I guess it wasn't this week. It was last week. I think it was published on November 22nd. So I'm a little bit late on this one. I didn't realize it was out there. But they essentially had a Q&A with the X-Men editorial staff. I thought this would give us some good insight onto maybe why there are some issues within the X-Men line, this Age of Krakoa that we're in, why we've had some stinkers in here, and maybe there's some key insights. There's nothing too salacious in here. Jordan White does make himself look like a goofball, but he is a card-carrying member of the Legion of Doofuses. You can see why some of these editors' books are performing better than others. But, I'm not going to give every question and every answer. I'm going to give the question, a couple of the answers that I found interesting, expand upon those, and keep moving on. So if you ever wondered why the X-Men comics weren't that great, I think, number one, Jordan White, Legion of Doofuses, is the main reason, as he's the senior editor, the group editor of the X-Men line. But we get some idea of some of the bona fides, some of the comic books that have motivated these editors and that they find as instrumental in the reason that they have these jobs and whatnot. So the editors themselves introduced. First, we have Mark Basso. He's been at Marvel for 14 years. He's currently editing Wolverine, X-Force, X-Men Legends, as well as 10 Lives of Wolverine, 10 Deaths of Wolverine. So as far as editors go, he's been editing some of the better books. And his assistant editor is Drew Baumgartner, who I don't think is maybe he's been there a month. It's something like that. It was a very short time. The other editor is Sarah Brunstad, who's been full-time at Marvel for 8 years, joined the X office pretty recently, currently is working on Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Marvel Voices, and a few new X-Men books that aren't announced. And her assistant editor is Anita Okoye. I think she's been there a couple of months. Next up, we have Lauren Amaro, who's an assistant editor at Marvel for 4 years, working on Inferno, X-Men, Immortal X-Men, Sabretooth, Marauders, X-Men Unlimited. Interesting, X-Men Unlimited. And then we have Jordan D. White, card-carrying member of the Legion of Doofuses, senior editor, the group editor, working at Marvel for 14 years, and works with Lauren Amaro on the book she listed. So he's essentially the editor, and Lauren Amaro is the assistant editor. It sounds like, now that she's been at Marvel for 4 years, the other assistant editors have been there for a few months. Lauren probably has more ability to execute on her own with less oversight from Jordan White than the other assistant editors. But all the books that she's doing, he's essentially the guy. He's the one that gets the final say as the lead editor. So he's like, X-Men Green is Jordan White's baby and Jerry Duggan's baby. X-Men Green, one of the most disgusting stories to come out of the X-Men universe in quite some time, highlighting what villainous, murderous people the mutants of Krakoa are, but also painting them in a light as if they're the heroes with no ability to see what they're doing is wrong. Let me go murder the clerk at a store because there was a bag found in the ocean. Let me go murder some dudes working on an oil pipeline because I don't believe in fossil fuels. It's their fault. It's their fault that they have to feed their kids. This is what's coming from the direct oversight of Jordan White. And you wonder why I say he's a card-carrying member of the Legion of Doofuses. So let's get to the first question. How did you find your way to Marvel's editorial department, and what made you want to be a comics editor? A lot of this has to do with people getting into intern programs and reading comics as a kid. There are a couple of them that I thought were interesting. And then I have one other observation after this to talk about. Drew Baumgartner, the assistant editor, studied at the University of Dundee in Scotland, offering a master's degree in comic studies. And he wound up working at Valiant, first as an intern, then as an assistant editor, before making his way over to Marvel. Who was over at Valiant when Drew Baumgartner was likely there? Heather Ontos. Who did Heather Ontos work with before this? Who brought Heather Ontos into the Marvel Comics universe as an editor? Jordan White. So it's likely that Heather Ontos was able to get Drew Baumgartner this job over at Marvel Comics. This dude has a master's degree in comic studies and is an assistant editor. How the hell, if you got a master's degree, you got to have a better job than that. Like, assistant editor does not pay very much. He's obviously paying his dues, working under Heather Ontos. There's probably a lot of bad habits you gotta fix. But why are Marvel looking to bring people in from Valiant Comics, the shittiest comic universe out there? Marvel Comics suck. Valiant's worse. And you wonder why things aren't getting better, because they're scouring the talent pool out there and pulling people from the worst possible places that you can find. But he's got a master's degree. If a dude has a master's degree and is working as assistant editor, he's making poor life choices. I don't mean to be rude. I don't want to be judgmental, but that motherfucker's sitting on a pile of debt making no money. Jordan White answered, after my master's program, I knew all I wanted to do was work in storytelling. Comics were my favorite kind of storytelling, and Marvel was my favorite kind of comics. My wife went to medical school in New York specifically so I could apply at Marvel. Well, congratulations. It sounds like Jordan White married up. His wife actually went to medical school in New York specifically so he could go there and work his way up at Marvel. So kudos to you. It sounds like you found a very good better half as far as working your way through there. Has it been a fruitful endeavor? It certainly has been for Jordan White. You know what? Also, I've noticed there's a lot of people in comic books that are married to doctors. A lot of writers. Hell, even a few of my friends are. I'm not dissing, but there's a lot of people that are like their significant others are in very like high performance fields. They can work on comic books. It's kind of weird how that works. What I did notice in this question when I was talking about how did you find your way into Marvel's editorial department, not a single one, and I think one of them has a writing credit of a 3-page comic book. I would be shocked if Jordan White at some point didn't write a comic book or two there, but none of them talk about their writing experience in comics and how they could, improve the writing or whatnot. I don't think any of them have ever actually been professional writers. Me personally, I have several friends in the comic industry and collaborators, likely a lot of these are both, that work in editorial services or will provide them on a freelance basis. Right here, they're with me on Thinking Critical all the time. Mark Pellegrini, Mark Sparrow, Aaron Sparrow. I know there's a few others. Those are the two big ones that jumped to mind first. Guess what? All my friends that work at editorial and comic books, guess what? All of them have in common besides editing comic books. They've all written comic books. Why are you buying a bunch of people that don't know how to write? You know what I'm saying? How are you not pulling people out that you said, well, they really developed a character or this, that, or they were very successful. Maybe they would be good at editorial services. None of them know how to write comic books. Shockingly, that does come through in Marvel Comics' current X-Men line. There's another comic question. This would I'll only do the Jordan White answer, and I'm going to have a little anecdote about leadership. This was the question. Is there one thing you find yourself doing as a comic editor you never would have expected? This was Jordan White's answer. This is the leader, the group editor, the senior editor, the man who's been there for 14 years, that sets the tone of the X-Men office and leads the entire team of editors, writers, artists, letters, colorists, all that stuff. Jordan White said, I definitely never expected that I would make videos of my cat as a puppet explaining the history of the Ancient One, but I did. I don't have anything against, people making videos of their cats as puppets, whatever. But this is like the main leader. This is the person that all these people are looking to set the tone as far as levels of professionalism, excellence within the office. And he's a goofball. He's a moron. He's one of the Legion of Doofuses. One time, I was in the military. I'm a retired Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force. I've talked about this here and there, but I got a little story for you. When I was in Korea, one of your jobs, essentially as a senior NCO, a Master Sergeant, is that you are supposed to not only lead, your NCOs and help out with the younger enlisted troops, but you're also there to mentor officers, specifically young officers, lieutenants. And there was was it a Christmas party? No, it was a Halloween party. There was a Halloween party coming out. And when you're a very young lieutenant, when there's a unit Halloween party, you're going to get the gig because it gives you an opportunity to learn, to go out there and organize something and execute, at a very low level to where if you mess up, you're not going to screw up your reputation or whatever. And it's a really good learning experience. So this young lieutenant came up to me and said, Master Sergeant, I need your help planning this Halloween party. And he sits down and I said, you and I need to go to lunch because we're not going to plan this in front of everyone else because people are going to have ideas and you're not going to use them. They're going to get mad. We're going somewhere else. We're going to do a little bit of mentor. Good opportunity to help the young man out. We sit down and he says, these are the things that I would like to do. And I said, well, you need to check in, and I helped him through the ropes. You know what I'm saying? That's what Master Sergeants do. You need to do this, this, and this. You've covered almost all your bases, but you need to find the venue. You need to make sure that you can do it between these hours and these hours where you're going to need, there's going to be music. You got to do. And I sent him all over and, he was able to execute it. But my last question, because it was a Halloween party, I said, sir, because I got to be respectful, even though I've been in for like 17 years, whatnot. He's only been in for a little bit. He's still an officer. Got to show him the respect. I say, sir, what Halloween costume are you going to wear? Because you got to wear a costume. If it's your party, you have to participate wholeheartedly like it's the best party ever. And he tells me, and I shit you not, he said, I'm going to go as a sexy sailor to this Halloween party with all the young airmen and, NCOs and stuff that work for us. And I looked at him and I said, you cannot do that. And he goes, why not? I said, we have been, in a constant state of war for like 15 or 16 years now. You're going to get deployed with some of these people in this office, and you're going to have to lead them, and you're going to make decisions, and you're going to have to tell them to do things that are, against their best interest as far as safety. If you show up as a sailor with Daisy Dukes on and, with the low cut, showing off your chest hair, they're not going to be able to take you seriously. You need to be able to communicate with the people underneath you. You need to be able to relate to them, and they need to be able to come to you and talk to you about things that are happening in their lives, especially when in the military and you're away from people like you. There's a lot more to leadership there and whatnot. But you also cannot make yourself look like a dumbass. You just can't. And a lot of people have issues with that. Once they get into a position of leadership, they still think they're one of the guys. It just doesn't work like that. If you want to be an effective leader, you have to be approachable. They have to know that you are one of the guys. But there also has to be a barrier up there to where they take you seriously and they know that when you say something, it fucking goes. If you start making videos of your cat as a puppet explaining the history of the Ancient One, no one's going to take you seriously. The guy's a dipshit. That's all there is to it. There's my story about leadership. Now we've got a couple more questions I want to get into. It says, in your role, you help creators ensure their stories are the best they can be. What's one story you love that inspires you to help produce new classics? Now, this should be revelatory, right? Drew Baumgartner, one of the assistant editors. Fraction and Aja's Hawkeye run was the series that brought me back into the Marvel fold. It inspired a ton of imitators, but the distinct voice and look of that series really changed my expectations of what a superhero comic could be. That is tragically unfortunate. I know for some reason some people still think hold this in high regard. But if you go back to Fraction's Hawkeye run, that is textbook how to destroy an existing character and destroy the replacement character at the same time. He murdered Clint Barton Hawkeye. And in the process, he made Kate Bishop so unbelievably, unbearably, just a terrible character, always shitting on him as he completely failed constantly. Not, in my opinion, should not be. It does not bode well. You can love whatever you want, whatever your inspiration can be, whatever you want. Does not bode well for the future of Marvel Comics if Drew Baumgartner is going to be in the X-Men office for a long time, because he's going to be destroying old characters to try and build up new characters, but end up destroying them both at the same time if he follows the Matt Fraction Hawkeye blueprint. Sarah Brunstad, well, who was she? I think she was one of the regulators. Yes, she's been at Marvel for 8 years working on all those Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Marvel Voices books. You'll see why here in a second. She said, dang, Hawkeye is a good pick. Alias, another not particularly superheroic book. And one of my favorite comics of all time still. It's a definite career goal of mine to build complex stories about women, heroes and villains, and all the women in between. Ladies on toilets, that's my niche. And as far as classic stories go, I'm really inspired by the research intentions and sheer creativity of Don McGregor, plus company's jungle action stories. I want to bring that level of thoughtfulness and collaboration to every project I do. Doesn't really like superheroic stories, and it's her career goal to only tell stories about women. Obviously, she's already working on Captain Marvel, was working on Black Widow and Marvel Boys and stuff. Now moving into the X-Men line for some unnamed projects. I wonder what those unnamed projects could be. Could one of them be a Storm book or a Kitty Pryde book? It's guaranteed to be a female character book. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But do you want to see Storm on a toilet? I don't. Do you want to see Moira X on a toilet? I don't either. But it is in your future if Sarah Brunstad is going to be working on your book. Jesus, what kind of fucking answer is that? And here's another one. This one, it's Jordan White. There is a copy of Watchmen downloaded to my phone at all times. Then he also goes on to talk about Agatha Christie. Watchmen is one of the seminal comic books in the history of the industry. It's certainly one of the most influential comics in modern comic books, but it's also one of the reasons that comic books are dying, that there's no heroism left, that we've, we're propping up villains to make them look virtuous, and we're destroying heroes as we make them look, as unheroic as possible. You can look at Watchmen and you can admire it. You can even try to imitate it from time to time. But if that is your leading influential comic story in your career, you're going to get a shitty version of the X-Men, and you're going to have a degradation of whatever Jonathan Hickman's original story was into what we have now. Is it shocking that we're here? Absolutely not. Not under the leadership, the stewardship of Jordan White, whose major influence in comic books is Watchmen. Great story, seminal moment, something that will be printed until the end of times because of the quality. But it is not, I fucking repeat, it is not a blueprint on how heroic superhero comics should be written and executed. That is the most cynical take on comic books I've ever seen in my life, other than the shit that Quentin Tarantino put into Kill Bill Volume 2 when that one dude talked about Superman and Clark Kent. Fuck that one. This is the last question. This is also telling. Is there an X-Men story you worked on, you were especially proud to have been a part of? If so, what made it so special? Now, a lot of these people had only been in the X-Men office for a few months. So some of the answers were kind of weak. The one dude that did 10 Lives and Deaths of Wolverine, everyone's overhyping that thing up. You better hope it delivers if you're saying it's the best thing you've ever done. You worked at Marvel for 14 years. That being said, this is what Lauren Amaro had to say. Having just sent Inferno to the printer, it's hard not to wax poetic about that. Jerry's doing such a great thing on the main X-Men book right now, and I'm always going to have a spot in my heart for the time I got to spend on that insane ride that was Hellions, but I don't think there's been a project I haven't been proud to work on. Well, you worked on X-Men Green. How are you proud of that? That is going to be staying on your resume until the end of times. Congratulations on doing a fantastic Hellions book. That thing was dynamite. I'm heartbroken that it's out the door. You shouldn't be proud of X-Men Green, and Jerry Duggan really isn't doing a good job on the X-Men book. It's been trending down, down, down. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. Anita Okoye, new to the office, says, I've only been here 2 months, but I'm pretty proud of having Teeny Howard's Excalibur and Vita Ayala's New Mutants be my first experiences working on X-Books. Well, I'm sorry. You can only go up from there. Those are, two of the worst comics that Marvel's producing, period. And that's too bad. You're literally setting someone up for failure moving forward in the comic book industry. Could you put her on Hellions for a couple issues, man? Do something to prop her up and show her a good storytelling's like. But Jordan White's not a good leader. Speaking of Jordan White, this was his answer, and this will be the end of the questions. I am most proud of this entire era. We're working on the X-Books in a new, really an exciting way. And I am so proud of all the writers, artists, and editors who have worked on them, really rising to the occasion and making the Krakoa Age something special. Oh, it's something special, all right. It's turned into a flaming dumpster fire. You've written one of the worst superhero stories, released it on digital, X-Men Green, that anyone's ever seen. You've produced two of the most lackluster, underwhelming, well, actually three, because he did Age of X-Men events in the history of the X-Men line: Age of X-Man, Ten of Swords, Hellfire Gala. You've ruined what appeared to be what was going to be like the bright shining light at Marvel Comics, Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. You ran him away, and you've replaced him with a bunch of hack writers who are producing just inferior comics. Over time, they just degraded. Even Ben Percy can't write a fucking competent comic book at X-Men right now. Hey, but Jordan White is a card-carrying member of the Legion of Doofuses, and he's very proud of the work he's done. So there is your X-Men editorial team. I thought there were a few answers that were in there that were enlightening, and obviously, a little anecdote as far as leadership and why I think Jordan White is likely one of the worst leaders in the history of comic books. Have a good day.